Welcome to the Breadwinners, the podcast where we talk about what it actually takes to lead and earn when the world keeps shifting under your feet. I'm Rachael Lowell. For nearly 20 years, I've been coaching leaders at top-tier institutions and Fortune 500s through massive change. But what's happening now is different. The pace, the pressure, the way it's hitting people's work and their lives. We are all being called to adapt and then adapt again. Rhonesha Byng knows what that's like. She has a mantra: no one ever slows her agenda. It's motivated her for the last 18 years of building her company, Her Agenda, an award-winning digital media platform bridging the gap between ambition and achievement for women and sharing resources to help them achieve that success. In her 2 decades in media, she has watched her industry shift time and time again and has had to figure out how to shift along with it. In today's episode, we talk about why community is her secret weapon, how women can build power, and what it takes to build something that lasts. Let's dive in. I am so thrilled to have Rhonesha Byng here on the show today. Rhonesha, your mantra, which I love so much, is no one ever slows her agenda, which is fabulous. And I want to know about, as we do in the Breadwinners, did no one ever slow your agenda from the jump? Or is this something that you've learned over time? And I want to hear your origin story about how you became the superwoman that you are.
Yes, I love that we're starting here because that mantra really also operated as a way for my community to remind me of myself and my purpose, because I had declared that this was my mantra. And as I was going along my journey, especially with entrepreneurship, anytime I expressed frustration or wanting to give up, my community echoed it back to me. They're like, but no one ever slows your agenda. You know, they would kind of say it in fun, but it also was just like, I declared this, I need to live up to it. And that's part of the reason why I'm still here as an entrepreneur 17 years later. But going back to the beginning, I was raised by a single mom. And I remember seeing my mom work so much and so hard, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. And that really affected me because I said to myself as a little girl, I remember feeling like life is about more than work, and it's about having a purpose. And I remember, this sounds so almost surreal, but I was a child watching television and felt like I'm going to be on that TV one day. I didn't know what that meant at the time. And fast forward, now I'm in media. It makes sense in hindsight. At the time, I thought maybe I'll be a singer or maybe I'll be an actor, because that's all you saw on television were entertainers at that time. This was like the 90s. There were not reality shows or docuseries that were showing, people in business or any of that type of stuff. Fast forward to me being in school, discovered journalism. The rest was history from there. And I just discovered journalism and media is my purpose and passion. And that led me to want to launch Her Agenda and being in the media industry, period.
Okay, so there's so many pieces of this that I want to dive into. First of all, as a single mom, I love that story of watching your mom work so hard and purpose. It's something I hope I'm modeling for my kids, frankly, working really hard trying to build a business that reflects who I am and what I believe, and I want them to build lives and careers that purpose. So it's so incredibly inspiring to hear that is what your mom modeled for you, that dedication to work, and that inspired you on your journey. And I love that you saw the TV, you saw the image, you knew where you wanted to go. It sounds like that was really strong from the beginning. I'm curious, community is something that you talk about a lot, and that is just so powerful and I think so critical in terms of skills that we use today to operate and navigate the world, right? We need our communities. Was that something that you were raised with? Were you and your mom part of a community? Did you feel like that was something that was instilled in you early?
That's an interesting question because no one asked me that question in that way before. But now that I'm reflecting, this is like a little therapy session too. Now that I'm reflecting, I grew up in the Baptist church and I was able every Sunday to see how a group of people were able to get things done collectively.
Yeah.
And so I think about tithing and every Sunday, how much money is raised to sustain the church itself or to raise money for a cause. And also I saw how powerful the church was as an entity, not because the individuals involved, but because of what they meant collectively. And so whenever someone was running for office or anything like that, they would come to the church. And these are big politicians that I would see. And I'm just like, they're coming to our little church in Brooklyn, but it's because of the power of the collective. And so I always sort of had that, I think, subconsciously. And then when I built Her Agenda, I wasn't so much about the collective, but it was more so I'm talking to these women who are me. Like I'm also trying to figure out my life and career. And so let's do it together. I come from the idea of having a mindset of lifting as we climb. And because I started my career so young, I was in high school and I had so many mentors, I wanted to replicate that with my peers. And that was the Her Agenda community approach. And then it evolved when I launched Bomisi. Bomisi is a nonprofit organization that helps independent media companies that are looking to find revenue and sustainability to come together again as a collective. Because when it comes to marketing and media buying, it's all about reach and scale. But you can't achieve reach and scale unless you actually have the resources, i.e. the capital, to invest in talent and operations. And also, gone are the days where you can publish a story that's a good story and it will get in front of the eyeballs that you need. You actually need to have budget to put behind the article when you deploy it across social media and across these other distribution channels in order for it to reach your audience. So you could have 100,000 Instagram followers and post something and it won't go to them unless you're able to put a spend behind it. And so with that in mind, thinking about these individual platforms that have valuable audiences, but they're not 10 million eyeballs.
Right.
How do then we get to the 10 million collectively and also still be able to stay true to our mission? And so that was the notion with Bomisi and community. So it's all about really achieving a mission. And in order for that mission to be achieved, you can't do it by yourself. You have to bring other people along.
Yeah. And maybe it sounds like a therapy session, but I think what's helpful is really to tap into how these phenomenal women leaders got to where they are. And the idea that community and the Baptist church played such an important role with such a consistent presence in your life, and you watched how the community came together. To me, it's such a clear line to what you're building with Bomisi, what you're building with Her Agenda. It's all a lot of people, I've seen people who really want to do a solo operation and not build folks around them. And you've consistently made that central. And I think that's phenomenal. There's so much to talk about in terms of these companies, but our traditional question, and I'm curious, it might have kind of not worked that way for you. But what was the turning point where you really made this switch to build your career the way that you have? It sounds like there was that initial moment where you saw what you wanted, right? You saw the path in media and you certainly had these connections to community. But I'm curious if there was a moment where you were like, this is the way it is and this is the way I'm going to do it.
There were a lot of, I would say, micro moments along the way. So one of the first moments was that moment when I was a child. The other moment that followed that was when I discovered journalism as a career at all. Yeah. So I was in high school. I took a journalism class just to fill up my schedule, really. I had no idea really what it meant. In hindsight, it sounds silly because I went to Edward R. Murrow High School, like one of the most iconic journalists ever. But I didn't think about it. Like, I was just like some guy that the school is named after. Never looked into who it was.
That is really funny.
And so I'm in this class and I'm like, wait, there's a career where you can ask questions be the first to know information and you just write about it or you talk about it on TV and that's the job. Like, who hid this from me all these years? Growing up, I was always the kid that was like reading like a whole book in a day. And, I get assigned a 2-page paper and I would write 10 because I was just, a nerd and super into learning and writing and reading. So everyone would always ask, are you going to be a lawyer? Are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to be a doctor? And none of that really felt right. And so when I discovered journalism, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. All the skills that I've naturally had, like being nosy, curiosity, and being like impatient. I'm an Aries too, and I have no patience. So just being able to be on the pulse of information to me was very exciting. So then fast forward to, all right, I'm in this thing. And I started working at NBC when I was 17 through a program called the Emma Bowen Foundation. So I was able to see behind the curtain of corporate media and how that works. And I wasn't there just for a summer. I was there every school break, including those little 1 week, 2 week breaks that you have throughout the year in the newsroom, up close, seeing the anchor, seeing the executive side, seeing the sales side. I saw the whole thing. And that allowed me to see how corporate media operates. And
what did you learn behind the scenes? Like, what did you see culturally, in terms of how they operate? That's an organizational development word, culture. I mean, organizational culture.
Yeah. So, I go into this pure-hearted journalism. I want to tell stories.
Sure.
And then it was just like the image, the rose-colored glasses got broken because I was able to see what went into what stories actually make it to air. I was able to see, when it came to talent and anchors and things like that, that while they were the face, they didn't really have autonomy in terms of the stories that they wanted to cover. They had to fit a certain path and a certain mold. And so that's something early on that I knew I didn't want. I knew I wanted to be a prominent storyteller and possibly be on air one day. But I'm like, I cannot make the sacrifices that it takes to get here. So that's the number one market. So I imagine all of the sacrifices that they made along the way to get there and still not have autonomy and the ability to actually do the thing that you want to do, which is tell stories and tell the stories that need to be told. And so I recognized early on, I need to have something that I own. And this is the beginning of the internet becoming what it is today. It was the beginning of blogging. This was around like 2007, 2006. People didn't really know what was going on in the internet. And I'm in there. I'm on MySpace. I'm coding. I'm figuring it out. I'm like the social media guru in the newsroom. I taught all of the news anchors actually how to use their Twitter pages and how to integrate that into their storytelling process and all of that. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to figure this internet thing out. I'm going to start my own online thing while I'm navigating corporate media and learning and building relationships, but I know I won't be here forever. Now, I didn't know I was going to leave so early. I left corporate media when I was like 23, 24. And that came to a decision where I had to decide. I was working at the Huffington Post and I had to decide, are you going to stay here and get a promotion and be an editor? Or would you like to do your own thing? Because you can't do both. There's a conflict of interest here. And I'm like, well, I'm 24. I don't have the responsibility of rent. I was living at home with my parents at the time, which I was ashamed of, actually. I thought, I'm 24. I graduated. I should be out on my own in the world. But hindsight, again, it was a blessing to be able to have that cover. It allowed me the space to take that risk and to say, okay, I can try it for a year at least. If it doesn't work out, then I'll go back to corporate media. I still have those relationships. I still have that skill set.
Yeah.
And I just didn't look back. A year later, I got into an accelerator program, did that. And then a few months later is when I landed on Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2017. So couldn't go back after that.
I mean, that is such a leap. And, what strikes me, I talk to leaders about 5 different areas where they have sort of they could have a natural strength, and it relates to how our organizations work in the world. And one of them is about creating a psychologically safe environment. One of them is about change management. One is about purpose and performance. But there are 2 that I think just like spot on are make so much sense, that are your strengths, and that makes so much sense to me. And one of them is Horizon, which is about future focus and like upskilling. And I feel like you're always learning. You're always looking, like that story about you sitting in a newsroom and just educating people and coding and getting in there. I think it's a very consistent theme in your story. And I think our listeners would love to know sort of the secret sauce that's helped you build this media empire, really, since you stepped out on your own at 24, right? And the other thing is ties. It's about connection and community. So we've talked about that a lot. But I think that combination of being really willing to experiment and try, and even if the future of media was uncertain at the time, you're like, I'm going to go do this, right? Because this is the path that I want to explore, even without, certainty of how I'm going to get there. And then you did it in part by creating this community around you. So I want to talk a little bit about the companies that you're leading now. We've gotten different pieces of it, but if you could give us kind of a full picture of what you've built. And you've been up and working on this stuff for, I'm not doing the math, 15 years?
It'll be 18 years in this year, essentially. Yeah.
Incredible.
April 2008 is when I got the paperwork. The site launched a few months after that. But yeah, 2008 was the year. So it'll be 18 years this year.
That's absolutely incredible. So 2008, you founded your first company, and that was Her Agenda.
Yeah.
Tell us what it's been like over the past couple decades. What is it like to continue to build and grow?
Yes.
Yeah.
So 2008, I was still in college. So I started the first company while a sophomore in college. And I started it really because I was in a women's studies class and learned that women were not running the world, that the patriarchy was still holding women back. I looked at the statistics of women in positions of power across the world. I looked at the gender pay gap, and it was shocking because I grew up in New York. I was always, at least I thought I was always around powerful women that didn't let anything hold them back. Then looking in hindsight, when you look at their positions, their producers, their PR reps, but if you look at who they work for and who is in the C-suite and who's making those decisions, you don't see a lot of those women. So there's operators and people who, you see doing the work that are women, and they appear powerful, but they don't have the true power. Right. And having that moment in that women's studies class really just made me think, what can I build that can counter that? And I knew media had the power to shape perception and help people to understand what opportunities there were. And if there were not examples of power to follow, then how can we create more power? Yeah. And so Rachael, who we both know, Rachael Sklar, shout out to Rachael, your producer. And she always says, she has this mantra of changing the ratio. And I really subscribe to that as well. So when it came to starting a company, there were different phases. First, I had to figure out, well, how am I going to launch a website? I need money to pay a graphic designer. How does that work? And I ended up doing something very out of the box. I created T-shirts that said no one ever slows her agenda on it, and sold them. And so that's how I raised the first $5,000 to launch the website. Then it comes to, all right, I understand how media companies work. I'm working in corporate media right now. I need to get writers. How do I get writers? And the beginning, I didn't have any writers. I was the only person writing the articles. And so it was inconsistent, which that is not sustainable as a media brand. At the same time, I'm learning about VCs and venture capital dollars and how they're funding startups. That's the term that everybody used at the time for anybody starting anything, startup. And there's the beginning of Techstars and all of that coming up. So I thought, I'm going to raise VC money and I'm going to get advertisers. Did not happen. And while it seemed like a hurdle at that time, right now, sitting where I'm sitting 18 years later, being an owner with 100% control of my company is a blessing. And so one thing I did when I did finally get the consistency, the contributor network and all of those things, and I can kind of go into the path if there's time, but I wanted to make sure I didn't recreate what I saw in corporate media. I didn't want the politics. I didn't want the bureaucracy. I wanted people to have autonomy and control over what their role was and what they did. And so her agenda, even to this day, is very lean. We don't have any full-time employees. We have all 1099 contractors. We have a core team of 5 that does a certain amount of hours every week, and that's my go-to team. And then we have a contributor network of 50 women across the country who are freelancers that write the articles for the website. So that's the structure of the company, and everyone has their specific deliverables. And so we don't have meetings to talk about meetings. And we just like check in on Slack. We say good morning to each other. We go about what we have to do. We have once a month team calls. Like, I just let them do their thing. I get out of their way. I give them transparency of what's going on with the business, and they allow me to do what I need to do, which essentially I'm a seller right now. I wish that I could still write and tell stories, but I am focused on the business development, and I'm a salesperson essentially at this point. So they do their thing with the content and stuff. And then Bomisi is a whole different thing. We're a baby. We're 5 years old. We're still figuring out that infrastructure and what the team structure looks like. Because in that scenario, I actually have a co-founder. And so it's not just me at the helm making the decisions. So that's a whole different element that I'm navigating now as a leader.
Right. 2 things that really stick out to me about you as a leader, Rhonesha. First of all, I'm fascinated by the way you look at systems as they exist and what's broken about them, right? Whether it's around gender equality in the workplace, whether media companies, but you have this curiosity to be like, oh, why does it have to be like that? That
is literally it. That is what I'm saying. I'm just like, I understand this is how it's been, but it's no longer serving what we need as a society today. And so why can't we change it?
I think we have a lot in common. That's how I think about things. But there are so many people out there, and I've worked with them, where it's like, no, this is the way we're doing it forever. Like, let's just kind of recycle old things that we did. And like, and just make it sound modern or something like that. But what's so powerful is the curiosity and the willingness to go out there and say, I'm going to do it differently and I'm going to make this happen. And then I think also, I work with leaders all of the time, and empowering your team to do their best work, right? And they're contractors, they're independent, but you are saying, I trust you to help me build this company or sustain this company or grow this company in a way that's powerful. And you're transparent about what goes on in the company. And I think that's those things do not come naturally. That like ability to think out of the box, to see how things are working and to say, could I do it differently or better? And then being able to trust your team to help you execute your vision and be transparent about this is where the company's going, like not trying to kind of hide or obfuscate that. Those are incredible leadership qualities. So I'm curious, as we're in this time, and this season is about so much is changing in the world so fast, whether we want to look at AI, whether we want to look at, entire industries that are being reconfigured or dismantled in some cases. Is there a way that you've started to think about Bomisi and her agenda differently over the past couple of years as these changes have happened? Or as someone who's kind of always thinking about what's next and how do we innovate, is it kind of almost coming second nature to you and maybe not? As you're seeing these changes outside, it doesn't feel like it's impact your day-to-day in the same way.
That's a good question. A lot of what I do is funded and fueled by advertising and marketing dollars. And that's something that I'm looking at breaking out of. Not that I'm going to walk away from completely, but I think to elevate and evolve the work that I'm doing, which is something that is rare, where it does good, but it also makes money at the same time, because that money then gets circulated to do more good and to make more impact. And so I'm looking to break into philanthropy and that world and help those funders understand the connection that journalism has and media has on all of the focus areas and all of the issues that they're looking to affect. You want to talk about social change? You want to talk about gender equality? You want to talk about home security and feeding people and all of these things, diseases? It starts with awareness. It starts with what story is being told, who is setting the agenda for what society pays attention to. That all goes back to media. And if you look at the structure of media, who controls it? White male billionaires, still to this day. Yeah. And you have community owned and local, and you have diverse owned media companies, but they don't have the same reach. They don't have the same authority. And so those stories get told, but who sees them? And that's all connected. And so I really want to talk to major foundations like Knight Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, that have all of these focus areas, the Gates Foundation, that have all these focus areas that are important, but they're missing that media piece.
Yeah.
And if you can make the media more democratic and just more equitable, then you can shift power. Then you can shift awareness to hopefully find some type of solve for at least some of these issues, or at least make more progress. And so that's something that is a challenge, because that is such a world where it's who you know and what and all of that type of stuff. So I'm sort of at a beginning stage again of trying to build a reputation and build relationships in a whole new space.
God, I feel like, when someone jumps into a new space, sometimes it's like, oh, well, good luck. It's a whole different domain. But I think what we've learned in this conversation is just Rhonesha jumping into a new space, like you are going to kill it. Like it's just, it's so needed in the philanthropic world. So I am so excited to see where you go from here. But I want to dive into our last segment, which we told you about, called the Carbo Load, which plays on all of our brand ideas. I'm going to just ask you some rapid fire questions that we ask all of our guests, and we'll see where we go with it. So the first question that we ask everybody is, what do you think will always be human about the way we work?
I think what will always be human is the need for in real life experiences. I think we appreciate being able to work solo and work from home, but we still need those people in the room to ideate off of and to be able to just understand, okay, I'm on the right path, and just to kind of look over and understand you're not the only one, and you're not in an island by yourself. Other people are working with you on this. And events, I just love events and getting people together, panels, talks, fireside chats, that energy in the room, you cannot duplicate online.
My next question was, what was the best event you went to recently, which could totally be one of your events, and I'm dying to come to the next one. Boston keeps me a little bit further from New York events, but I've just heard reams about Her Agenda events that you organize. So what was the last one, Her Agenda or another organization, where you were like, this is a killer event? Like, this really nails everything I think an event should.
Yes, well, I'll take the bait. Her Agenda Live is the best event, because it's our first time bringing live events back since 2019. So it's been 6 years, and we came out the gate with 2 back-to-back events. One with Hachette Book Group, focused on publishing and getting women's voices out there as authorities in the book publishing world. And then the other one was in partnership with the Ad Council and AARP. That was in October, focused on pre-retirement. So women getting ready for their financial lives after they take a step back from their career or stop working altogether. You need to start now. And so that phase that we're in is called pre-retirement, like pre-gaming for retirement. So it was an integrated campaign. We did custom content, social, and then culminated with these events. So when we do events, it's not just one-offs, it's part of a narrative and a part of an overall integrated marketing plan.
Well, I need to move back to New York, I think is the answer, so I can come to these events. They just sound incredible.
Yes. We always have a virtual component too, but like I said, in person is where it's at.
No, in person is where it's at. There are trains and planes and automobiles. Amazing. So my last question for you, Rhonesha, I mean, your network is so huge. So it might be someone you've met before, and it might be someone you haven't. But my question is, if you could sit down with any breadwinner and talk to them about how they've built their work and life, it could be someone living or someone who is no longer with us, who would you want to sit at that table and break bread with?
Easy question. Oprah Winfrey, hands down.
Yeah. Okay.
I definitely would love that.
Well, that makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. She is one of the first to do it, blueprint in terms of starting out in journalism, then owning your name, owning your own show, owning your own network. And I'm sure, despite what we see, she shares a lot. There's behind the scenes that she cannot share. And that's the part that I want to know. The nuances, the negotiation points, the moments in between the contracts and the wins, and how you navigated those relationships, those negotiations. To me, the negotiations are very eye-opening because it's a dance.
Yeah.
And there is so much subtlety behind getting a deal to close that I just always love to ask women about that, especially women that have been acquired or have done major mergers and acquisitions, because I've seen it like on some level, but I know there's more to it. And I'm always trying to get tips around that.
I love it. I was going to ask you what was the first question you'd ask her, and you had it already top of mind, which should surprise no one who's listened to this conversation. Rhonesha, thank you so much for joining us on the Breadwinners. We can't wait to see what you do next. And I will speak for all of my listeners, say we're just so grateful for what you do in the world. So thank you.
Yes, I will say we are giving out a grant of $5,000. It's called the Breakthrough Grant. So listeners can go on to Her Agenda, search Breakthrough Grant, find it, apply. We also allow people to donate to that grant. So if you want us to be able to award more women, you can donate. And then we are launching for the first time ever a list called the Groundbreakers. And we're capturing submissions so you can nominate women to be honored in this first ever Groundbreakers. It will be annual, but this is the first one. So it's major in setting the tone. So if you know women that are breaking ground, breaking barriers, definitely nominate them.
Will do. I love that. Rhonesha, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been the Breadwinners Podcast. I'm your host, Rachael Lowell. The show is produced by Rachael Lowell and Rachel Sklar. Technical production by Ron Pissarro. Music by Hannah Baki. With gratitude for support from Ruth Ann Harnish. The Breadwinners was founded in 2019 by me and Jennifer Owens. The Breadwinners is a co-production between Smart Friends Network and Reworking Leadership. Thanks for listening.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.